POP3s and SMTPS by SoniaHicks. POP3s protocol. This section will be the overview, configuration of POP3s with dovecot, and hardening recommendations. Overview. POP3s, or Post Office Protocol 3 Secure, is an abbreviation for a secure variant of the POP3 email retrieval system. It is intended to give email clients a safe and secure way to access and retrieve email messages from a mail server. Email messages can be safely downloaded to an email client using POP3s. Its main purposes are retrieval, communication, deleting messages, simple retrieval, and offline access. Configuring POP3s with dovecot on Linux. To install dovecot on your Linux server, you use your package manager. On Ubuntu, use the following code snippet. To configure dovecot, we edit their configuration file, typically found in this location, to enable POP3s using the following code snippet. Next, we start and enable dovecot, starting dovecot and enabling it to launch upon booting by entering the following code snippets. Configuring POP3s with dovecot on Linux continued. Next, firewall setup. Allow incoming connections on the POP3s default port 995 in your firewall using the following code snippet. Then we can move on to testing with zenmap/nmap. To verify that dovecot is listening on the default POP3s port, which is 995, use zenmap or nmap by entering the following code snippet. Now let's move on to hardening recommendations for dovecot. 1. Using strong authentication. Enforcing strong password policies and two-factor authentication. Setting constraints for passwords makes them more resistant to guessing and brute force attacks. In addition to strong passwords, two-factor authentication adds another level of security. To prevent unauthorized access, think about using 2FA, especially for important email accounts or mail server administrator accounts. 2. Use certificate authorities. Refrain from using self-signed certificates in production because they don't offer the same level of reliability as certificates issued by well-known certificate authorities. It's recommended to use certificates from trusted sources like Let's Encrypt or DigiCert in a production environment. These certificates are from the CA are widely trusted, which lowers security alerts and boosts user confidence. Hardening recommendations for dovecot continued. 3. Enable rate limiting. When using dovecot, rate limitation is especially important for POP3 or IMAP logins because it limits the number of login attempts a user can make in a certain amount of time. It protects against attempts to use brute force attacks. After a certain number of failed login attempts, this feature prevents attackers by delaying or blocking their further attempts. By defining the maximum number of login attempts that are allowed within a given amount of time, dovecot's rate limits can be tailored to the needs of the user depending on the level of security that is desired. SMTPS. Configuration with IIS on Windows and with postfix on Linux, as well as hardening recommendations. Configuring SMTPS protocol with IIS on Windows. Setting up a secure email server to transmit emails via an encrypted connection is required when configuring SMTPS with IIS on Windows. The SMTP communication can be secured using SSL/TLS by configuring IIS SMTP to do so. The procedures for setting up SMTPS with Windows IIS are listed below. Step 1. Install the IIS SMTP feature by adding the SMTP server feature to the server manager. Step 2. Configure SMTP relay. If email routing requires relay configuration, do so now. To secure SMTPS, you must either produce or obtain an SSL/TLS certificate. Next, we configure authentication and relay settings in the IIS manager and bind the SSL/TLS certificate to the SMTP service. Next, we allow inbound connections on port 465, which is the default for SMTPS, while configuring the firewall. Finally is testing. We use Telnet or an email client set up for SS/TLS to confirm their connectivity. Configuring SMTPS with postfix on Linux. First, we install postfix. We can do this on Ubuntu by running this code snippet. Next, we obtain our SSL/TLS certificates for our mail server. Next, we configure postfix. We edit the postfix configuration file, typically found here, to enable and configure SMTPS using these code snippets. Next, we restart postfix. After making these changes, we restart it to apply the configuration by using this code snippet. Once restarted, we allow incoming connections on SMTPS port 465 using this code snippet. Finally, we test with zenmap/nmap, using these to verify that postfix is listening on the default port 465. We can do this by using the following code snippet. Hardening recommendations for postfix. 1. SMTP authentication. SMTP authentication is vital to prevent unauthorized relay through your postfix server. Users must provide valid credentials, username and password before sending emails. Enable this authentication in postfix through SASL, Simple Authentication and Security Layer. Create user accounts and secure passwords for email senders. Avoid plain text storage. Test SMTP authentication using supported email clients. Secure configuration. Secure postfix configuration can be done to minimize vulnerabilities. Furthermore, maintaining a safe server can be accomplished by preventing open relay by using access control lists to restrict sending permissions. Control sender and recipient policies to prevent misuse and spam. Monitor log files for unusual activity, unauthorized access, or suspicious traffic. Secure file permissions on configuration and data files. And implement network security, including firewalls, for traffic control. Sender Policy Framework. SPF is an email authentication protocol that combats email spoofing and preserves your domain status. Define authorized mail servers in SPF records within your DNS configuration to prevent malicious users from sending emails on your domain's behalf. Update DNS records to include SPF records for your domain using SPF record generators if necessary. Regularly test SPF configuration with validation tools to ensure correctness. Proper SPF configuration reduces the risk of domain misuse for phishing or spam.